My beloved child. Your soulmate did not break down because someone told them you still loved them. They did not cry because they suddenly became lonely, and they did not lose control because they were afraid you had found someone else. What shattered them was something far more difficult to face. They learned what happened to you during the months when they believed your silence meant you had stopped caring. And the person who told them was the last person they expected to hear it from. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening in a small restaurant they almost refused to enter. Your soulmate had agreed to meet their younger sister after work. Nothing serious had been planned. She had texted earlier that afternoon and asked if they could have dinner together because she needed advice about something happening in her own life. Your soulmate arrived late. They were distracted, tired, and already checking the time before they had even sat down. Their sister noticed. "You can leave if you want," she said. "I'm not leaving. You've looked at the door 3 times. I had a long day." She studied their face for a moment, but she let it go. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation remained ordinary. Work. Family. Their mother complaining about a leaking faucet. A cousin preparing to move across the country. Nothing that should have changed anyone's life. Then the waiter placed 2 glasses of water on the table, and your soulmate sister reached into her purse for her phone. Something slipped out with it. A folded piece of paper. Your soulmate glanced at it without interest. Until they saw your name. It was written in the corner. Not typed. Written. Your soulmate froze. Their sister immediately picked the paper up and tried to slide it back into her purse. Too late. Why is their name on that? She said nothing. Your soulmate leaned forward. What is that? It's nothing. Then why are you hiding it? Her expression changed. That was the moment the evening stopped being ordinary. She looked toward the window, then back at your soulmate, as though deciding whether a truth she had protected for months should remain protected. Your soulmate felt something tighten inside their chest. Where did you get that? Their sister exhaled slowly. You're going to be angry. At who? She did not answer immediately. And somehow that frightened them more. Because your soulmate had spent a long time constructing a version of your story that allowed them to live with what happened between you. In that version, you had withdrawn first. You had become distant without explaining why. You had stopped calling with the same warmth. You had answered messages later. You had sounded exhausted. You had become difficult to reach. And eventually, when your soulmate asked whether something had changed, you had said something they remembered almost word for word. I don't know how to explain everything right now. At the time, they heard only one part of that sentence. I don't know. They interpreted uncertainty as rejection. They interpreted exhaustion as indifference. They interpreted your silence as proof that whatever existed between you had become less important to you. Your soulmate never asked what everything meant. That omission had not bothered them for a long time. Until Tuesday night. Their sister unfolded the paper. I met them once after you two stopped talking. Your soulmate stared at her. What? It wasn't planned. When? A few months after. Why didn't you tell me? Because they asked me not to. Your soulmate sat back as though the answer had physically touched them. They asked you not to tell me? Yes. Why? Their sister looked down at the paper. Because even then, they were trying to protect you. The restaurant noise seemed to fade. Your soulmate gave a short, humorless laugh. Protect me from what? Their sister hesitated again. That hesitation was beginning to make them angry. Not because they knew the truth. Because they suddenly understood there was a truth. Something had existed behind your silence. Something other people apparently knew. Something they had never bothered to discover. Just tell me. Their sister folded the paper once. Then unfolded it again. I saw them at the hospital. Your soulmate stopped moving. For several seconds, no expression crossed their face. What hospital? She named it. The name meant nothing at first. Then your soulmate remembered something. A night nearly a year earlier. They had called you twice. You had not answered. Hours later, you sent a short message. Sorry. Difficult day. I'll explain when I can. Your soulmate had been irritated. They remembered staring at those words and thinking, there's always something. They had responded with one word. Okay. And because your answer afterward had been equally brief, both of you had allowed silence to turn one difficult evening into several difficult days. Now their sister was telling them that on that same night, you had been inside a hospital. Your soulmate's voice lowered. Why were they there? Their sister's eyes softened. That's the part one didn't know how to tell you. For the first time that evening, your soulmate looked afraid. Not jealous. Not angry. Afraid. Their sister began carefully. At that point in your life, several things had collapsed almost at once. Someone in your family had been going through a serious crisis. Money had become tight enough that you had quietly begun cutting things from your own life without telling anyone. You were sleeping badly. You were carrying responsibilities no one around you fully understood. You were trying to work, help your family, keep yourself functioning, and somehow continue showing up emotionally for a relationship you desperately did not want to burden with problems. You kept telling yourself you would explain when things settled. Things did not settle. They got worse. Your soulmate listened without interrupting. Their sister continued. She looked exhausted, she said, then corrected herself softly, remembering the person she had seen. Not just tired. Like somebody who had been holding everything together because they didn't believe they were allowed to fall apart. Your soulmate looked down. What happened at the hospital? Their sister did not dramatize the answer. That made it harder. You had accompanied a family member there after an emergency. You had been awake most of the previous night. You had been making phone calls, signing forms, trying to solve problems that were larger than you. And while sitting alone in the hallway, you had finally reached a point where your body could no longer pretend your mind was fine. You began shaking. Not loudly. Not theatrically. Your hand simply would not stop. A nurse noticed and brought you water. You kept apologizing. That detail pierced your soulmate unexpectedly. You apologized? Their sister nodded. For needing water. Something changed in their face. Because your soulmate remembered accusing you of shutting them out. They remembered thinking you had become emotionally unavailable. They remembered complaining to a friend that you always seemed somewhere else. And now, for the first time, they were being forced to consider where somewhere else might actually have been. Their sister continued. I happened to be there because I was visiting a friend's father. I recognized them from across the hall. Did they see you? Eventually. What did they say? Their sister stared at the table. The first thing they asked was whether you were okay. Your soulmate blinked. What? They asked about you. That doesn't make sense. I know. No, I mean, they were sitting in a hospital dealing with all of that, and they asked about me? Yes. Your soulmate looked away. Their jaw tightened. That was the first moment their sister saw tears forming. But they did not fall yet. Pride still had control. Barely. What did you tell them? I told them you were hurt. Your soulmate closed their eyes. Their sister continued carefully. I told them you thought they were pulling away. I told them you were angry. I probably said more than I should have. What did they say? They didn't defend themselves. That surprised your soulmate. Because defense was what they expected. An explanation. An excuse. Something that would reduce guilt. Instead, their sister told them you had simply lowered your head and said, I know. Then, after a long silence, you had added, I just don't know how to make room for one more person to worry about me. Your soulmate's eyes opened. That sentence landed differently from everything before it. Not because it accused them. Because it did not. You had not said they were selfish. You had not said they were incapable of helping. You had not blamed them for your pain. You had been afraid of becoming another problem in their life. Their sister said she had asked you why you had not simply told them the truth. Your answer was quiet. Because they were finally doing well. At that time, your soulmate had recently begun making progress in an area of life that had caused them years of insecurity. Work had improved. Their confidence was returning. They were finally sleeping better after a difficult stretch. They had told you how relieved they were that life no longer felt like one emergency after another. And you had heard that. You remembered it. So you had decided not to become another emergency. Your soulmate covered their mouth with one hand. Their sister stopped talking. The waiter approached the table, noticed something was wrong, and quietly walked away without asking whether they needed anything. Your soulmate stared at the empty plate in front of them. Then they whispered, I told everyone you stopped caring. Their sister did not respond. I said you were probably looking for an excuse to leave. Still nothing. I said if you wanted me, you would have made time. Their voice cracked on the last word. Their sister reached across the table, but your soulmate pulled their hand away. Not from anger. From shame. I said some terrible things. I know. That answer made them look up. You know? Their sister nodded. That was when another part of the truth appeared. Your soulmate had assumed their family disliked you because of things they had seen themselves. That was not entirely true. Some of their family's opinions had been built from your soulmate's own version of events. Whenever someone asked why you were absent, they had answered bitterly. They're busy. Whenever their mother asked whether the two of you were okay, your soulmate had shrugged. Apparently I'm not a priority anymore. When a relative suggested you might be struggling with something, your soulmate had dismissed it. If they wanted me to know, they'd tell me. Bit by bit, frustration became a story. Then that story became the version everyone repeated. You were distant. You were inconsistent. You did not know what you wanted. You had hurt them. No one stopped to ask what was happening to you. Except their sister. And even she had learned by accident. Your soulmate looked again at the folded paper. What is that? Their sister finally slid it across the table. It was not a letter written to your soulmate. That would have been easier. It was an old hospital discharge instruction sheet with a few handwritten notes on the back. Your notes. Their sister had kept it because that night, while waiting for your family member to be discharged, you had borrowed a pen and written down a list of things you needed to remember the following morning. Call insurance. Pick up medication. Pay electric bill. Ask manager about extra hours. Check on mom. Then underneath those practical tasks, squeezed into the final corner of the page, you had written something different. Call them when I can talk without falling apart. Your soulmate read the sentence once. Then again. Their fingers began trembling. Their sister spoke softly. You didn't know that, did you? They shook their head. Your soulmate stared at the handwriting. There was no dramatic declaration of love. No speech. No accusation. Just evidence that while everything around you was breaking, you had still planned to call them. You had not forgotten. You had not stopped caring. You had been trying to survive long enough to explain. And then another memory surfaced. 2 days after that hospital visit, you had called. Your soulmate remembered seeing your name on the screen. They had watched the phone ring. And they had not answered. Because they wanted you to understand what being ignored felt like. That realization struck so suddenly they pushed their chair backward. Their sister reached for them. What's wrong? They called me. What? They called me after this. Their breathing changed. I remember. They called me. Their sister went still. Your soulmate stood up. People at nearby tables looked over. They sat back down almost immediately, embarrassed, pressing both hands against their face. I didn't answer. Their sister whispered their name. I didn't answer. This time, the tears came. Not gracefully. Not like a movie scene where a single tear rolls down someone's cheek at exactly the right moment. Their entire body folded inward. They tried to breathe quietly. They failed. Their shoulders shook. They leaned forward until their forehead nearly touched their hands. For months, your soulmate had carried anger because they believed you abandoned them in silence. Now they were remembering the call you made from the other side of that silence. A call they rejected deliberately. You had tried. And they had made sure you felt the door close. Their sister moved beside them and placed a hand on their back. Your soulmate whispered, "Why didn't you tell me?" There was pain in the question, but also accusation. Their sister accepted it. Because they asked me not to. Why would they do that? They said if you were angry, you had a right to be angry. That isn't an answer. They didn't want pity to be the reason you came back. Your soulmate lifted their head. Their sister continued. They told me that if you ever chose them again, they wanted it to be because you understood them, not because you felt sorry for what they had been through. Your soulmate stared at her. That sentence destroyed the last defense they had. Because even while hurting, you had protected their freedom to choose. You had not wanted suffering to become leverage. You had not wanted pain to become a weapon. Their sister handed them a napkin. They ignored it. What else? She frowned. What do you mean? You're still holding something back. No. Yes, you are. Their sister looked toward the paper. The expression on her face gave her away. Your soulmate saw it immediately. What else happened that night? It's complicated. Tell me. I don't know if I should. Please. That word sounded different coming from them now. Not demanding. Not angry. Broken open. Their sister returned to her seat. There was another conversation. With who? With your mother. Your soulmate went completely still. My mother knew? Not everything. What did she know? Their sister hesitated. And suddenly your soulmate remembered something else. Several months after your separation, their mother had stopped criticizing you. At first, she had joined in whenever your name came up. She had said maybe the relationship was never right. She had encouraged your soulmate to move forward. Then, strangely, her tone changed. She stopped saying anything negative about you. Once, when your soulmate complained that you had shown your true colors, their mother had answered with unusual sharpness. Be careful judging someone whose whole story you don't know. At the time, your soulmate became irritated. They accused her of taking your side. She refused to explain. Now the pieces were moving. What did Mom know? Their sister lowered her voice. She knew you were wrong about one thing. Which thing? That you thought they left because they stopped loving you. Your soulmate stared. A long silence passed between them. How would Mom know that? Their sister swallowed. Because she spoke to them. When? After the hospital. Your soulmate's face lost its color. Why? I don't know the entire conversation. Then tell me what you do know. Their sister looked uncomfortable. I know your mom called them because she wanted answers. She thought they were hurting you. She wanted to tell them to either be honest with you or leave you alone. Your soulmate could barely speak. And when the call ended, Mom cried. That detail seemed to frighten them more than everything else. Their mother rarely cried. Especially over people outside the family. What did they say to her? I don't know. You said she knew I was wrong. She did. How? Because after that conversation, she told me something. Their sister paused. She said, those two are hurting each other because one of them is drowning and the other thinks the water is rejection. Your soulmate turned toward the window. Outside, headlights slid across the wet pavement. For a long time, they said nothing. The breakdown had quieted, but what replaced it was worse. Recognition. The slow, painful recognition that a story they had repeated for months might have been built on incomplete information. And faith, when it appeared in that moment, did not arrive as a promise that everything would be repaired. It arrived as conviction. The kind that asks a person to stop defending themselves long enough to see the harm they caused. Your soulmate had prayed before about losing you. They had asked God to take away the ache. They had asked Jesus to help them move forward. They had even prayed for clarity. But they had never considered that clarity might require them to admit they had helped create the very distance they were grieving. They looked at their sister. "Do you think they hate me?" She shook her head slowly. "I don't know. Do you think they ever loved me?" That's not the question you should be asking. Your soulmate frowned. "What is?" Their sister tapped the hospital paper. "The question is, what are you going to do now that you finally know they were trying to reach you while their life was falling apart?" Your soulmate looked again at the handwritten sentence. "Call them when I can talk without falling apart." Their thumb moved over the edge of the paper. Then they pulled out their phone. Your name was still there. Not in recent messages. Far below. Buried under months of other conversations. They opened the thread. The last exchange was painfully short. You had written, "Can we talk?" Your soulmate had answered, "I think we've already said enough." They stared at those words for nearly a minute. Then their sister said something that made them stop breathing. "That wasn't the last message you sent each other." Your soulmate looked up. "Yes, it was." "No. I'm looking at it." "I know." "Then what are you talking about?" Their sister's face changed again. This time there was no hesitation. Only sadness. There was another message. From who? From them. Your soulmate looked back at the screen. There isn't. I know. A chill passed through them. What do you mean, you know? Their sister leaned closer. Because your mother saw it before it disappeared. Your soulmate stared at her. Disappeared? She told me about it months later. What did it say? Their sister drew in a breath. And for the first time that evening, she seemed afraid of what the truth might do once spoken aloud. It explained why they really walked away. Your soulmate's hand tightened around the phone. Tell me. But their sister did not. Not yet. Because what your soulmate was about to learn was not only about what you had endured alone. It was about the final decision you made after realizing they had stopped answering. And hidden inside that deleted message was the one truth that could change everything your soulmate believed about the night your relationship finally broke.